Jackson.
I'm the oldest Jackson.
And Tito Jackson.
The swingin'est Jackson.
And Marlon Jackson.
The dancingest Jackson.
And Michael Jackson.
The skinniest Jackson.
And Randy Jackson.
The cutest Jackson. Let on me, mama.
Now Michael wanted more creative freedom. He wanted to do his next album totally outside the family, even though the brothers tried desperately to make his solo album a group production as soon as they heard about it. They were hurt that Michael wanted to exclude them from the project, but he stood firm. "I'm doing this on my own," he said. "They're just going to have to understand for once." What Beyonce say? The first time I said no, it's like I never said yes. Uncertain as to how to proceed, Michael called Quincy Jones, who had offered a helping hand during production of The Wiz. Quincy seemed an unlikely choice of producer for Michael. He had found success in the pop R&B arena with his own albums, which were virtual music workshops of musicians, writers, and arrangers, with Jones overseeing the entire program. Quincy had also found mainstream success with the Brothers Johnson, a sibling duo out of Los Angeles whose platinum albums he produced. Okay, let me tell y'all something. That goddamn Quincy Jones back on the block, baby, is the one. You hear me? Now, I mean, the Wiz soundtrack is maybe the two, but that back on the block is definitely the one. "I didn't even want to do The Wiz," Quincy has said. "I thought there's no way the public is going to accept a black version of The Wizard of Oz. I kept telling Sidney Lumet I didn't want to do it, but because he's a great director and because he hired me to do my first movie soundtrack, The Pawnbroker, 1965, I did it. Out of that mess came my association with Michael Jackson." When Quincy and Michael came together in the recording studio in Los Angeles to start laying rhythm tracks together in 1979, the artist and producer turned out to be a perfect match. Quincy's in-studio work method was to surround the artist with superior songs and fine musicians, and then let the artist have his free reign. Pause. What book was that we read when the artist was supposed to be working with Quincy Jones, but Quincy Jones just did what he wanted to do? He sauntered in whenever, got there however. Okay, I'm here. Do you go? I don't know who it was. And then it was somebody else that said they had a Quincy Jones project that was horrible. Like Quincy Jones, he has to have a certain kind of artist. Because now that Quincy Jones is explained to me in this way, I get it. Quincy's just there sitting around going, meh, you can do that a little better. Take that out. Do what you want to do, but, let's tweak this a little bit. Because Michael Jackson wanted so much creative power, I can see how that Quincy and Michael dynamic really worked in the Off the Wall project. Yeah. Michael had been so accustomed to being on a short creative leash. He was ecstatic when Quincy began taking his ideas seriously. Quincy recalled that at first he found Michael very, very introverted, shy, and non-assertive. He wasn't at all sure that he could make a name for himself on his own. Neither was I. Quincy, on the other hand, hadn't worked with an unharnessed brilliance like Michael's since his days with some of the jazz greats. In Michael, he'd finally found what he'd been looking for in a talent. Quincy was also amazed at Michael's versatility. He can come in a session and put down 2 lead vocals and 3 background parts in one day, he said at the time. He does his homework, rehearses, and works hard at home. What Quincy says is that a lot of artists, they do everything in the studio. I can believe that because you have some rappers that don't write a lyric unless they're in the studio because the studio is their happy place. That's where they feel they're most creative, in the studio. Whereas you have Michael, who is creative all the time. He could be just driving, which there will be a scenario we will talk about later, but he could just be driving and come up with a song. And all people can't do that. Quincy Jones hate that kind of person, that the only way they can work is if they in the studio. Studio time costs money. The two developed a close rapport outside the studio as well. And over the years, Michael would think of Quincy as a hip father figure. Michael would confide in Quincy and take direction from him in a way that reminded many observers of the kind of relationship the public thought Michael had with Joseph. However, Quincy was the antithesis of the natural father who used to hit Michael to get him to perform up to expectation. Damn. Michael got a whole bunch of pappies. First it was Joseph, and then when Barry Gordy, was making him feel special until he didn't anymore, it was Bertie Gordy. Now it's Quincy Jones. Michael Jackson, you got 3 daddies. With the songs selected, Quincy Jones then summoned a handful of crack session players. Keyboardist Greg Phalanganese, George Duke, and Michael Baldicker. Guitarist David Williams and Larry Carlton. Bassist Louis Johnson. Percussionist Paulino da Costa. And the Sea Wind Horns, led by Jerry Hay. And they all went to work. During Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which would become Off the Wall's first single, Michael unveiled a playful, sexy falsetto no one had ever heard from him before. You right. Don't Stop was released on July 28, 1979. In less than 3 months, it was top of the charts. Michael's first solo #1 record in 7 years. It soared to #3 in the UK, a huge hit for him. It was also the subject of his first solo video. When compared to the kind of musical videos Michael would do in just a few years, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough comes across as primitive bullshit the baker. He was just sitting there with the lights and shit flashing and stuff like that in that shimmery outfit. I was impressed. The album that resulted from all of Michael's work with Quincy, Off the Wall, was released in August 1979. Michael Jackson had officially arrived. The performances revealed sides of him never before heard by record buyers. Even more revealing was an emotional Michael crying real tears on the end of She's Out of My Life. When Rock With You also made #1 and then Off the Wall and She's Out of My Life both went to #10, Michael became the first solo artist to have 4 top 10 singles from one album in America. In Britain, Off the Wall also made recording history with 5 hits released from a single album. Although it would sell 6 million copies worldwide, it never went beyond #3 in the US and #5 in the UK. Michael was excited but cautious. It's a start, he said. Oh, I remember reading this part in LaToya Jackson's book. Oh my God, this thing broke my heart. In life, there are always certain traumatic events that change you forever. And it changes the way you think forever. And it's going to manifest in who you are for the rest of your life. Michael Jackson has had several events that messed with his head, and this is one of them. When Off the Wall won only 1 Grammy in an R&B category, Michael was crushed. It bothered me, he said. I cried a lot. My family thought I was going crazy because I was weeping so much about it. He was so disappointed, Janet concurred. I felt bad for him. You watch. The next album I do, you just ... I'll show them. Which is Thriller. Thriller. That motherfucker showed them with Thriller. For his part, though, Joseph wasn't so disappointed. I think it's good to keep things in perspective, he said privately. The boy doesn't need more success. He needs to get into the studio with his brothers. That's what he needs. On August 29th, 1979, Michael Jackson turned 21. Even though he, as a Jehovah's Witness, did not celebrate his birthdays, we in the media did, especially the important ones. I had interviewed Michael for magazine articles to mark important age milestones. Michael turns 16. Michael turns 18, and even Michael turns 20. So I was happy to meet with him once again for, yes, Michael turns 21. It was a turning point in his life, and he felt it in a keen way. Just days after I interviewed Michael, he and Joseph had an argument, one more bitter than any in recent memory. Michael decided that the time had come to make it clear to his father that he wanted more control over his career. Joseph didn't like being criticized by Michael, but he asked for it. When he inquired as to the problems Michael had with the way things had gone in the past, Michael gave him a list of grievances. In part, he didn't like the way the situation with Jermaine had been handled, wasn't satisfied with the way the group had left Motown, and was also unhappy with the recent CBS product, with the exception of Off the Wall. Wisely, Michael kept it all about business. He left out personal complaints and certainly didn't address the subject of Joseph's blatant unfaithfulness to Catherine. I let you make that movie, didn't I? Joseph shot back at him. This is how you repay me? You didn't let me make that movie, Michael answered, his eyes blazing. I'm grown up now, Joseph. I'm Michael Jackson. I make my own decisions. Why, you little ... Joseph lifted his hand and was about to smack his son, just like old times. However, he changed his mind. Michael gave him a defiant look and walked away. You better don't! Joseph the Jackson, you better don't smack Michael. Are you out of your mind? That's the golden ticket. How dare you? Raise your hand to the golden ticket. Are you crazy? Michael Jackson is dead and buried, and he is still paying bills in the Jackson house. He is lunching. Prior to this time, Michael and his siblings only used Joseph's attorney and accountants. Now that Michael wanted his own representative, Joseph felt as if his sons didn't trust him. Of course, Michael didn't trust him. Michael had more than $1 million in his own bank account now as a result of Off the Wall, and he wanted to hang on to it. He realized that money was power, and if he wished to break away from the family, it was his bank account that would best support that effort, not Joseph and not his brothers.
You say that you love